They're relatively forceful, even if they're not like physically forceful. But there's also been times where they couldn't care less about if we're there and aren't talking to us or just ignoring us.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it depends on the number of observers, I think.
I also think that they tend to be more amped up and a little bit more aggressive and care about our presence when Putin was there.
Oh, that's interesting. Meaning when he is like physically present with them, or just
That's the host of MS Now's All In with Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes doing a ride-along with two members of ICE Watch in Minneapolis, describing to him how federal officers typically treat them when they arrive on the scene. And Chris joins us now, live from Minneapolis, his New York Times bestseller, titled The Siren's Call, How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource, is now available in paperback. We'll get to that in a moment and how it really actually connects here. But Chris, first, what are you seeing and hearing on the ground, more from your interviews with people there?
What I have been so struck by, a few things. One, the unity that people feel. I mean, people genuinely feel under siege. Just talking to folks, like, it's hard, I think, to grasp just how ubiquitous the presence of these agents have been, how everyone is just one person, either directly impacted or one person away from it, that there were agents at their kids' schools, that their favorite supermarket had agents there. Like, people have been encountering it. And that sense of siege has created this incredibly steely sense of unity, along with a lot of grief and rage after two people were shot and killed by agents of their own government. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and you got a little bit in that ride-along yesterday, is the level of civic infrastructure that has been built on the fly by people here. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands, probably 100,000 people have gone through these upstander trainings. There are people doing all kinds of different things, from doctors giving medical care to people getting groceries to folks locking arms around schools. You know, if you go and read Taylor Branch's Pulitzer Prize-winning Chronicle of the Civil Rights Era, particularly the first one, Parting the Waters, there's chapters about the Montgomery bus boycott, and everyone sort of learns the Rosa Parks part of it, and then there's the boycott, and then there's a victory. That boycott went for over a year, if I'm not mistaken. And all that year, it was all logistics. Like, how are people going to get rides? Who's giving rides to who? Like, real sort of granular stuff about how to make this work. And that's what you're seeing here, is this remarkable, voluntary, ad hoc, but highly organized civic infrastructure grow up, born purely out of like a desperate desire to protect their neighbors.
Chris, good morning. It's so great to see you. I think all of us in the country has been struck by the resilience of the people in Minneapolis, which, as you say, they've been through a lot in these last, let's call it 6 years or so, since the murder of George Floyd as well. But I think you make a really interesting point about the infrastructure. We hear again yesterday from President Trump saying they're paid agitators, they're organized. Well, there's a difference between being organized and being an outside agitator or a mercenary of some kind. These are people of these neighborhoods who don't like what they're seeing in their communities and are out there doing something about it, even, it turns out, at the risk of their own lives. So where are they finding that resilience to keep coming out?
I think part of it is just people feel attacked, and there's a unity and resilience that comes from that. But on the organizing thing, it's so funny, this idea of like paid agitators. You know, there's some right-wing influencer who was like, he had a picture of a, table at some training. It's like, they have hand warmers and snacks. It's like, right, like every single, travel soccer game has that. And in some senses, if you're a parent, you are on 5 to 10 WhatsApp groups for different, activities, travel basketball, your classes. What's happened here is that all of those WhatsApp groups that got created for that have become signal groups about how they can make sure that ICE doesn't kidnap a teacher at their school or a kid at their school. So all of the civic infrastructure that existed, again, a lot of this has been like parents and PTAs for that. Like, who's bringing snacks to this weekend's travel soccer game is now, how do we make sure that this family can get groceries because they're afraid to leave the house because they might get snatched on the street? And that threat, I just got to emphasize this, it's real. I mean, there was at the peak here, and we don't know the numbers right now, something like 15% of all ICE agents in the country were in the Twin Cities. There's only a few 100,000 people here. I mean, this was happening everywhere people were going.
Chris, as you've noted, the attention span in this nation of ours is drastically being reduced by the moment, by the day. And yet, what happened in Minneapolis this weekend, you can be grocery shopping in Waltham, Massachusetts on a Sunday, on a snowy Sunday, and the tentacles of this story are seemingly ever-reaching by the day and might be longer lasting than anything we've ever experienced, of course, I think in the last 30 or 40 years. Would you agree with that?
I think that's such a good point, and I think the dynamics here around attention are so fascinating at a few layers. One is there's sort of a very interesting backfire that happened, right? Because Trump ordered this surge because he wanted to drive a kind of political message against Tim Walz and to get people paying attention to this long-standing set of fraud investigations that have been happening in Minnesota, which preceded him, which actually, you know, the Justice Department under Joe Biden had looked at. And it had the opposite effect, because what happened was, once masked agents are in the streets, you know, grabbing people at gas stations and demanding people show them their papers when they're walking home from school, that became what captured people's attention. And then in succession, in 2 weeks, they shot and killed 2 American citizens who were peacefully observing. And now that is a story, because what else could be the story? The other part of this that I think is really interesting from that sort of attention standpoint is, when a metaphor enters our language, we tend to forget it's a metaphor. And I've been thinking about the metaphor of a whistleblower. You know, we've all seen the red whistles, right? And what the whistle is the whistle is like a siren. It's a way of compelling attention. It's a way of alerting people. It's got a very practical purpose. People blow the whistles to let everyone know on a block in the surrounding area that DHS agents are there and they're trying to get someone. But that kind of literal whistleblowing has become a kind of metaphorical one too. Like, you have ordinary citizens blowing the whistle and saying, like, this is not okay. Everyone pay attention to this. It isn't okay for these people to come and grab our neighbors in the middle of the street, grab them out of their car and leave their car running in the middle of the street because they don't have their papers with them. And I think there's something about that the vast majority of Americans across ideological and partisan lines actually agree with.
There's one influential conservative podcaster last night suggested that whistles should be banned because of exactly this phenomenon in Minneapolis. Chris, let's turn to
That'll do the trick.
That will do it. Ban the whistles. So, Chris, indeed, as mentioned, Sirens Call out in paperback now. Talk to us about some of the things you wrote about in the book, and through that prism, how you see that applying to this unfolding situation in Donald Trump's United States, but particularly Minneapolis.
And the book is about the way that our attention has been commodified and then extracted, often in a way that feels against our will, and left us with this sort of enduring, constant sensation of alienation, that a thing that should be inside us that we control is outside of us. And I think people feel that. I mean, you were just talking about, you know, being in a grocery store on a snowy Sunday. You know, people's feeling about that has become so common, it's almost a complaint like traffic. You can go anywhere in the country and you could complain about the phones, right? Everyone feels it. They feel the way that this sort of insane commodification of our attentions happen. And we feel our attention spans getting shorter. And we also live in a political environment in which this one individual, because I think of some real deep and dark pathologies that he has and a kind of feral instinct for attention, depends entirely on attention and consumes our attention. And one of the sort of key insights I think that he's had, that he's running up against, is as long as people are paying attention, it's good, even if it's negative attention, even if they're mad at me. And what you're seeing right now, I think, you know, and I write about this in the book, about this, the sort of power of Trump's insight, about the power of negative attention. We're seeing also the limits to that here. Because remember, they wanted to go in and make the big spectacle. Bovino's whole thing is cutting sizzle reels of his raids. They landed an Apache helicopter on the roof of an apartment building on the south side of Chicago and rappelled down the sides and cut together a video that was like a scene from Narcos to raid a bunch of residents living in Chicago when they were there. Jonathan Ross, when he shot and killed Renee Good, was holding his cell phone in his hand and the gun in the other because he was filming because they're making content. They thought this was all going to like grab people's attention. People are going to love it. And in fact, people are repulsed by it. And now they're on the other side of a good old-fashioned public opinion rebuke. And you can see that they're on tilt. Because the game plan that they have used for so long, which is just driving and commanding attention, whether positive or negative, has started to fall apart in this moment and in year 2 of this administration. And I think we are in new and different terrain, even as all the sort of structural things that make it hard for us to sustain focus are there. And that's the last thing I'll say is the big question for the people in Minnesota and the Twin Cities the last few days is this pullback real? It doesn't necessarily look like it so far. And how can we sustain this level of civic infrastructure when attention wanes, when we're not the national story, right? But people are still being grabbed and we still need to protect them.
President Trump, grabbing attention, likes to skip around and change that attention based on how the news is going. Let's not talk about the economy. Let's talk about Venezuela. Let's talk about Venezuela. Let's talk about Minneapolis. And now, with the scenes we're seeing in Minneapolis, let's talk about Iran. A great book. The paperback version is The Siren's Call, really the story of our time. Chris Hayes, great reporting on the ground. Thanks so much. We'll be watching for much more. All In. That's Tuesday through Friday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on MS Now. Chris, thank you very much.